Okay, so we've created something we can buy along with the interface that goes with it. Now we need to be able to define a payment method and the interface that goes with that. So let's do that. Okay, so let's create our payment method interface first. So I'm just going to open up a new interface and I'm just going to call it payment method. First up, let's give our payment method an ID, and that's just going to be a string. Next, let's add a currency to our payment method. And here we're going to want to type this instead of just leaving it as an open string. So let's go GBP for Great British Pound, USD for US dollar. Let's add Australian dollar as well. And let's also add the euro. You can add or remove as many currencies as you like. I'm just going to keep it those four for the time being, just to keep things nice and simple in a union type. And just to make things nice and easy, let's give this an available balance. So again, you probably wouldn't have this in a real payment method API, but this is all mock data, so it doesn't really matter. And our available balance is just going to be a number. Okay, we've created a fairly basic payment method interface. Let's create an object out of that. So I'm going to call it my payment method, and I'm going to give it the type payment method, and let's open up that object. The ID doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to call it my default payment method. Next up, we've got our currency, and that is, as Visual Studio is very helpfully pointing out, needs to be one of these four types. I'm going to go with GBP. And let's give our available balance, well, we need at least £10 to be able to afford our donuts, so let's go 50, so that we can buy 5 donuts if we want to. Hi there, just a quick interruption to let you know this video is part of a larger course called an Introduction to TypeScript. It's aimed at JavaScript developers who basically want to get up and running with TypeScript in about 2 hours. I'm going to be uploading the entire course for free on this YouTube channel over the next few months, but if you want direct access to the entire course like right now, there should be a link on the screen or in the description where you can get the entire thing now. Thanks again for watching, back to the video. Let's extend our payment methods to create a credit card payment method and go from there. So let's create a new payment method and call it credit card payment method. So credit card payment method. And we want this to extend our payment method because there's properties inside the payment method that we're going to want to remain consistent throughout our credit card payment method too. Okay, so what kind of properties would our credit card payment method have on it? Well, if we're following a very, very popular payment API, then we would have things like the expiry date, the type of card on it, and we would also have a Boolean attached to it, which states whether the card is valid or not. So let's add those. Okay, so let's start off with the expiry date, and we'll just give that the date type that JavaScript offers for free. We're also going to add a type property, which is going to stipulate whether this is a credit or debit card. And we're also going to add a Boolean, which is going to be card valid. Okay, great. Let's add these properties to my payment method. So expiry date, new date, so now apparently. The type is going to be set to credit, and card valid, we're just going to set to true for the time being. Now we're getting a red line underneath our expiry date, and if we hover over that, we can see that the error that pops up is type ID string currency GBP etc. is not assignable to type payment method. Expiry date does not exist on the type payment method. And the reason for this is because we've explicitly defined our myPayment method object to be a payment method, not a credit card payment method. So let's change that type to credit card payment method and hit save, and that has fixed the error. For my own sake here, I'm actually also going to hit Command and J, and I'm just going to run yarn tsc watch, just so that we also have TypeScript building in the background at the same time. Okay, so our credit card payment method interface is looking good. Let's say, for example, we want to extend our payment method once again and add a cash payment method. So the way that we're extending our payment methods interface here, we're adding 3 more properties: expiry date, type, and card valid. Well, what happens if we don't actually want to add any more additional properties to it? To do that, we can use a system that TypeScript offers called type aliasing, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's giving one type a different name or an alias. And to do that, it's very, very simple. Let's just go type cash payment method equals payment method. What that says to the compiler, simply put, is the cash payment method is just another name for payment method. That means that we can now declare our cash payment method, so const my backup payment method as cash payment method. And let's add the properties that we would need for our payment method, which would namely be our ID, which would be my backup payment method, currency, let's say this is in US dollars, and our variable balance is 2000. Goodness knows why this isn't their default, but who knows. And that satisfies the compiler because on line 37, we're effectively saying cash payment method is another name for the payment method interface, which is defined up here. Our backup payment method has all the same properties on it as our payment methods, but because we've set our cash payment method to be an alias of payment method, this is valid code. So let's tie all that together with one more interface, our customer. Our customer is going to have an ID, it's going to have a primary payment method, a backup payment method, which is going to be optional, and it's also going to have an array of baked goods that they already own. So let's set that up. I'm just going to scroll down here, set up a brand new interface called customer, and our ID is going to be string. Let's give our customer a primary payment method. And we want that to be either the cash or the credit card payment method. So let's create a union type. Cash payment method or credit card payment method. Let's add a backup payment method. Now this one's going to be optional because not all people are going to have a backup payment method. So let's add a question mark on the end of that to indicate to the compiler that it is an optional property. And that's going to use the same type as above. So cash payment method or a credit card payment method defined with a union type. And finally, we're going to add an array onto our user, which is going to stipulate which items they have in their basket. So let's go items in basket for the name of this property. And let's scroll up to the top just so that I can see what we named our interface at the very top. That is bakery item. Bakery item. And because we want this to be an array and we don't know the length of the array, so this can't be a tuple, we're going to add an open and close square bracket at the end, which stipulates that this is an array. All right, our customer interface is ready. Let's create ourselves a customer. So I'm just going to declare a new constant. I'm going to call it customer. I'm going to explicitly define the type as customer and open up a new object. Okay, so we've got our ID, which is going to just be whatever we want. Let's go my first customer. Then we have a primary payment method. Primary payment method here is going to be a cash payment method or a credit card payment method. Now you might have remembered from earlier on, we've actually already created ourselves some payment method objects just up here. We've got my payment method and my backup payment method. So for our primary payment method, let's go with my payment method. And then for the backup payment method, let's specify our backup payment method. And because we've explicitly defined the types here as credit card payment method and cash payment method, this is valid inside of our primary payment method and backup payment method type. And so when we hit save, this is all valid code. TypeScript does throw an error here, however, which is saying that items in basket is declared, but it isn't present in our object. And so we can just fix that by going ahead and adding an array of items in our basket. And right now our customer doesn't have any items in their basket. So we're just going to leave that as an empty array and hit save. Okay, great work. We've declared the shape of our models. We've declared our models themselves. Now all we need to do is hook this up by creating some functions that use all of these models. So in the next video, we'll be covering that. I look forward to seeing you in that one.